people are not aware that this is going on in their businesses, then there's shadow work. So it's the illumination of all the uncomfortable places and having the uncomfortable conversations. Understanding confrontation dynamics are extremely important. There's a difference between confrontation and conflict. I'm Tah Whitty. I am the co-founder of the Condor Approach, which is the world's most comprehensive psychedelic-informed integration seminar and coaching certification. I am also an emotional navigation master coach. I work with amazing human beings right now in my life. I've been a registered nurse for 32 years. I practiced in emergency rooms all over New York City for 23 years of my career. So I know the in and outs of trauma and drama. I've worked with veterans. I've worked with people of all different socioeconomic backgrounds. And I've had my own host of individual human traumas around my body, around violence, sexuality, and all sorts. And I have a leg up when I'm able to completely dissociate myself from the programming and the constructs that I've been steeped in for most of my life so that I can see from an objective lens.
Hey, I'm Taylor Davis. Welcome to Wildly Satisfied. I hope you enjoy the show. Welcome back. We are so excited about this portion of the next part of the series, actually with Tah Whitty. We're diving into emotional regulation, nervous system, feminine leadership, and what it looks like to actually create businesses, movements, impact, money, everything that can actually honor how our nervous system is supposed to interact with the world and be in a more regulated state. Because I know from my perspective, I've been through many different businesses where there's success somewhat, but at the same time, the nervous system is dysregulated, so there's a lot of stress involved. So the question always comes around of, oh, well, if you're successful, but at the end of, later in your life or even in your early 30s or in your 20s, you are stressed out beyond belief, was it worth it? And so I can't wait to dive into a little bit of that conversation, how we can switch the nervous system and get into some really great practices around that. So if you would like to reintroduce yourself just a little bit.
I'm Tah Whitty. I am the co-founder of the Condor Approach, the world's most comprehensive psychedelic-informed integration seminar and coaching dynamic.
You got that down.
Yeah. Yeah, the topic of emotional and nervous system regulation is a very dicey one for me. Yeah. And the word regulation in and of itself connotates control. Something is being regulated, right? There are rules and regulations, right? So something has to be held back and controlled. For me, my nervous system, I don't want my nervous system to be controlled. Conditioned is one thing. Right? Now, if I'm conditioning myself, it's one thing. If somebody else is conditioning me, that's where a regulatory space comes in. Okay. Right? And so when I'm conditioning myself, I am the person who's influencing my nervous system the most. Right? And so there's a difference between influence and control. Right? Okay. And part of what I like to share with folks is emotions are signals. You cannot regulate your emotions. You can hide from them. You can hide the behaviors that happen on behalf. You can modulate your behaviors. You can regulate behavior. You cannot regulate emotions. That's like somebody telling me, okay, I want you to stop
feeling sad,
feeling affectionate for Taylor, right? Don't want to hug Taylor, right? Don't feel affectionate. And I can say, okay, I'm not gonna hug Taylor, I'm not gonna go close to her. That's modulating and regulating my behavior, which is a nervous system dynamic, right? It's not modulating the feelings. And so what I like to compare it to is we have two different types of feelings. We have emotions and we have sensations.
I love this part, yes.
Right? Sensations are, I'm touching something, I'm smelling something, it's sensory. Emotions are a feeling space that can be devoid of sensation, and they can also work with sensation at the same time. So if I was to put my hand next to a stove, I'm gonna feel heat. Now if I say, I want you to regulate your sensation and not feel heat, sounds ridiculous, right? Yeah. But if I tell you, you shouldn't feel angry, you should regulate your emotion, you're not going to regulate that emotion. You're going to not show it. You're going to hide it. And what you're going to do is you're going to modulate the behavior patterns and the expression of that emotion.
And most likely repress.
you repress your body's expression of it.
Yeah.
And so if you repress the expression of it, that's a lie. That's dishonesty. And dishonesty is a safety space, right? When I'm dishonest, I'm hiding something to protect something else. And so that becomes a conditioned space of the nervous system, and that becomes a dis-ease. And that dis-ease long term becomes an illness, and that illness breaks the body down and we die, right? And so that's the long-term dynamic. And so when you look at businesses and you ask people to regulate their emotions, emotions are an intuitive space,
Which we talked about in the last episode.
right? It's an intuitive space, which is a highly feminine space. It's devoid of logic. And so when you love something or you like something or something resonates and you modulate the behavior or the expression of it, it becomes uneasy, right? And so if you have a meeting and somebody's sitting there and they're making faces and you're like, why are you making those faces? Stop making those faces. It's disruptive. It's inconvenient. And so we build these types of dynamics into businesses. We build these types of dynamics into interactions. We are very sterile in these places to get to an endpoint that can be a very masculinized space. And this is the conundrum right now, is we have the rise of the female business person. We have the rise of the female entrepreneur, the female politician, bringing this type of energy that is aberrant, that is expansive, that is emotively expressive. And then if we look to modulate that and push that down, we stifle the female organism. We stifle the male organism as well in that place. So this is the place that that's just kind of coming up for me around emotional navigation, because navigating emotions is different than regulating
Emotions. Yeah. I feel like when, even as I say, I always pay attention to that because I'm like, oh, there's my feminine, right? When we talk about being a business person, right? Being in the business world, a lot of what we have in those dynamics is from a very masculine perspective. And when you were talking about that around emotional navigation versus, I would say what we previously had was probably emotional regulation, and regulate your emotions. Don't say things. This is not a time for emotions at work, right? We're very like, we just got to focus on work. That's for at home, or you focus on that later. It's old system, an old way of being. There's this thing that happens now because it no longer works. We're human beings. We need to be able to emote and express, and otherwise it just gets repressed, and then there's all these problems. And the convenience aspect is, I feel like a lot of people don't know how to handle something quote unquote as inconvenient as emotions in a space where there's literally no like training on it, or there's no experience with it. They're like, oh no, we're not. You're crying in the middle of a meeting. Like they don't know how to like really step into that and be like, this is how we navigate that. So when you are working with, let's just say female business owners, male business owners, however you want to approach this, what are some of the things that maybe one comes up for them, and two, that they can actually physically do to make it a little bit more convenient, or work in the space of convenience?
Okay, so we're looking to work in the space of convenience.
Yeah, to be able to normalize, we're human beings, and we're not going to have, most likely we are not going to have businesses and things like that where we're like, oh, yep, don't want to feel that. Put it away. Like that's kind of a thing of the past.
Well, the first thing is that we have to change that normalization of businesses. In my business, we had a meeting the other day where one of the people on the team had some emotions come up. And it was an hour and a half meeting, and we spent an hour of that meeting navigating through that space, because this person is a big player on the team now. And so since she's a big player on the team, we had to wait. And I was the person that was like, nope, everything stops. This is what needs to be navigated. Because if she's in this space of distress on this call, and we bypass that, we say what needs to be done, and she gets off the call, she's not going to be optimized to do what she needs to do. No. And so we need to clear that up right now. And this is part of the issue, is that we don't make space for this type of stuff in businesses, and then we wonder why businesses collapse from the inside, because there's a lot of shadow work happening. And this is one of the things where you have all this spiritual talk and all these things around shadow work. This is shadow work. If a person's emotions are not allowed to come to the surface because it's inconvenient, and that person is talented, highly talented, and is having challenges at home, is having challenges in these spaces, then the business is going to suffer. And so how do we build this into a malleability space and learn how to set boundaries? Hey, listen, I understand that there's emotions and stuff happening. We're at a standstill now. And so if we can't move beyond this, I'm going to ask you to take some leave time, or I'm going to ask you to move out of this meeting so that we can get this done. Are you cool with that? And we can bring you back in when you're in the space where you can flow with this. This is not saying that you're being punished or put out or anything like that, but we are in a position to move forward with this dynamic. If that's not a space that's functional for this dynamic, then let's get you into a position where you can operate, and let's get this dynamic. And so we build teams around this where everybody is talented and all of their talents come to play. And there are many times where we have businesses where there's only one person that can, like the Condor Approach. Cole has all these things that she has built in where she's the only person that can handle it. And so we're training other people to be able to take on these things so that if she's not capable of navigating that because of an emotional dynamic, because of any kind of dynamic, we move her out. Listen, Cole, go do your thing over here. We got this.
Yeah.
And so we build this into the business structure. And that's part of the dynamic is right now, we are in a prime position where we have all these amazing, brilliant women that have all of these talents that can do things that men cannot. How do we build a structure around that dynamic?
Yeah, let's dive into that a little bit more, because I love like practices and specific tactics, specific ways to rebuild business models. I get so nerdy about this because for me, when I work with teams or when I see this happen, for example, when you were saying that, the first thing that came up was there is this dynamic where a lot of women will handle all the things. And there's like for me, it's like a couple of things came up as you were saying that. One was the woman that does all the things on the team, like literally so many things, and then her nervous system is frayed or burned out or whatever it is. And then another version is like, oh, but I need to handle all these things because if I let go of control of one, I'm not as valuable. I've seen that come up as well, of like, they don't want to hand off this task because then they could get replaced or whatever it is. And so I'm wondering, instead of diving into like, oh, here's all the things that could be going wrong inside the system, what are some ways to set up a new structure where you do honor, hey, to make a better nervous system or to give a little bit more. I love the example you had of let's navigate this. Let's talk about this inside the meeting, or let's move it outside of the meeting, or whatever it is. What are some other practices?
Yeah. So primary practice is in initial training when people come into the business is training around nervous system dynamics. Most people have no idea how their nervous systems work. They have no idea what sympathetic and parasympathetic means. They've heard of fight or flight, but they don't know anything other than that. And so being able to have some training around this dynamic, around basic what sympathetic and parasympathetic is, and then have another training around female body, male body, right? Or estrogen-based body, testosterone-based body, depending on the flow, because not everybody is only one or the other. And so this is how hormones can affect situations and dynamics. This is how hormones can affect situations and dynamics. It can be a 20-minute video, 15-minute video explaining this stuff, and then actually having a sit down with the team and talking about it and seeing where the belief structures of people are, because people believe based on gender dynamics, gender roles, and where people were raised, that everybody should act this one certain way and function. And that's usually based on male bodies. And so when we start to understand these dynamics from the gate and have trainings at the beginning of a situation where you have multiple people in a business, this is where we start to understand this. But a person has to understand where they are first. Most people have no idea how their hormone complexes work. They don't. They have no idea how their nervous systems work. They don't. And they don't. And then they'll assume that everybody works the way they work, or that they're supposed to work the way that person works, the way the father worked, or the way the preacher down the block, whoever the authority figure is. And so the first and primary thing for me with any business is to really get people to understand the difference between sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system dynamics, the difference between emotions and sensations, and then the difference between male estrogen-based body testosterone-based body, and how those things can influence what's going on, so that we can create an environment where there's patience and we can actually guide and direct if things are dissonant from the business. Because the business structure in and of itself does not have a sex or a gender or a hormone complex, other than the complexes of the people that are inside of it. And so if the business is very, very very hard edge, has rough edges and corners and stuff like that, and there's no malleability or flexibility, then we don't support all of the bodies that are in the business. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
With feminine, I'm going to say feminine leaders, because that's the language that we're using for this. If you have, because I work with a lot, and navigating the nervous system as you're bringing in more money or having a little bit of scarcity or anything like that, as a leader on the team, what would you recommend as a practice if your nervous system is in perhaps a dysregulated state? Is there any type of practice you could give for the leader in that position?
Yeah. So the first thing is breath. Okay. The brain, which is the captain of the nervous system, functions off of high oxygen usage. High oxygen usage. So breath work is something that gets, it's all the rage in the spiritual communities now, but it still gets bypassed in a lot of businesses. And so when we are sitting in front of a computer, or we're doing logistics, we're doing all these things, it requires a lot of brain work, because you have to take in information from the world through your eyes, your ears, your senses, all of these dynamics. You have to process it, okay? And then you have to put back out. And so the brain is orchestrating all of this. Now, the brain is about 2% of your body weight, and it uses about 20 to 25% of your body's resources of water, oxygen, and energy when you're awake and doing nothing. When you're awake, laying in a bed, doing nothing. Now, when you're working, it drives that up considerably. Let's say it goes up to 50% of your body's usage of oxygen, right? So your brain does not like to be deprived of oxygen. And so what will happen is it will take all of the oxygen usage away from any organs that are not necessary for the task at hand, right? And so if you're thinking and you're in front of the computer all day and you wonder why you're exhausted, the brain is using a tremendous amount of oxygen resource.
Yeah.
And the brain is also creating a tremendous amount of carbon dioxide, which is the body's largest waste product.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And so you breathe, you take in oxygen, and you put out carbon dioxide.
Yeah.
And so breath is the absolute pinnacle of any business person, particularly female bodies that are in a masculinized system, okay? It's very important to breathe. And I'm talking about not holotropic breath work or anything like that, but sitting down and getting yourself to be able to drop into your breath. Because when you drop into your breath, everything slows down. You get more resource. The brain is not in panic mode. It doesn't shut off the rest of the organs, and the rest of the organs are now relaxed. And since the rest of the organs are now relaxed, the brain can relax even more. And when the brain can relax even more, the nervous system becomes a space where it is conditioned to be able to navigate really heavy circumstances, because it's starting to breathe on autopilot in a way that is able to feed the body. And so being able to get breathing practices going outside of work, being able to understand what it's like to actually hold your breath for an extended period of time, right? One of the things that I always recommend if people want to get clear is to do 15 to 20 jumping jacks while holding your breath.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay? Because the brain, you won't be able to focus on anything else except when that is going to stop.
Yeah.
If you can get up to 20, 25, 30 jumping jacks while holding your breath, it increases the body's capacity to hold on to oxygen and change the dynamics. So the red blood cells will actually get bigger, and the hemoglobin content will be able to hold on to more oxygen and feed the brain more, and that'll put a person in a position where they can actually navigate things.
Like for example, if you were to do that before every meeting, right? Let's say it's like a team meeting. I'm thinking about it in practice of the person's day to day. If, for example, you have let's say me and my team, if I know that there's some high emotions that are happening for me or something's going on, I'm in a stressed state, doing that, activate by jumping jacks and then holding your breath at the same time and then coming down, right? And then going into the meeting, most likely you'll experience a more
a focus dynamic.
focused dynamic. I
you'll
couldn't
be
think of the
able-
word focus for some reason.
Yeah, a focus dynamic. Another thing is getting into plank position and holding it for an extended period of time. Right? The entire body has to activate. And so the brain will draw in more oxygen and it will oxygenate the entire body. And since the entire body is oxygenated, if the brain needs to go into an alert space and take more, the rest of the body's not like, oh shit, right? And so the body will actually be able to support the brain in utilizing more oxygen.
What about, are there other practices that you can do? Let's say it's in the middle of a team meeting. Because I think also from what I've perceived, what I've witnessed and everything in the teams that I've worked with, there's not often words. Like words fail people because they might feel something, but then they're not necessarily, you navigate the space beautifully. I've seen you do it on team meetings. Sometimes they're like, I don't know what to say when I'm having an emotion, I'm having an experience in my body, and I'm like, oh, I don't like what that person said. Like, let's say it's a leader of a business, right? For the most part, everything's good, but then there's like the one thing that someone says, and then the person on the team is like, oh, didn't like that. But they can't, or they don't know how to communicate that in a way that feels safe for their nervous system on the call. Do you have recommendations for things that they can say to really start to practice that?
Yeah, the first thing is, hey, I need a moment. Is it okay if we pause right now, right? Because radical consent, with everything is radical consent, so that everybody's in agreement. Hey, something's coming up for me right now. That's it, right? Something's coming up for me right now. Can we pause? And if the team is like, no, we can't pause, then it's not a team. It's these people over here and that person over there. And then we don't function as a team. And so it's, hey, something's coming up for me, right? And you may not know what it is, right? And then we can take a moment. We all breathe, right? Because we all need oxygen together. We co-regulate. Co-regulation is another thing that we could train our people in, is co-regulation. Let's all take a breath together. Can I ask what's coming up for you right now? Well, I don't know. Okay. Well, do you need anything right now? Well, I don't know. Okay. Are you perceiving that you're safe right now? Well, no. Okay. Well, what's the possibility that you'd be outside of safety? Can you share that? And then wait.
Yeah.
And then also express, my intention as an individual is for you to be safe. Does everybody else in the room agree? Yeah, we're here.
We all want you to feel
We all
safe.
want you to perceive safety here.
Yeah.
How can we support you in creating safety? That's where everything has to stop, right? And so once you, and if you're the leader of the team, this is a preemptive situation where it's like, hey, if something happens and somebody gets into a space, or I freeze, right? Because fight, flight, freeze, right?
Yeah.
This is a nervous system dynamic. And when we start to understand that if a person is frightened, if they feel threatened, if they feel anger, right? Anger is a safety mechanism. There's a situation going on. Whenever anyone gets angry, there's a safety dynamic happening here. So the moment somebody starts frowning, I stop and I'm like, hey, I noticed something shifted. Can we stop for a moment? Wow, no, nothing's going on. Okay, well, if something is going on, could you let me know? Are you clear to continue? Yeah, I'm clear to continue. Okay, if that should change, I want you to know that we can stop.
Yeah.
And we can get into that dynamic.
Or you can come to me privately if you feel safer doing that. Okay.
Right. And so this is a space where if there's any kind of shift in a person's nervous system, I stop the whole room. I don't care where it is. If you've seen me do it at Condor, that person's nervous system is important.
Yeah.
And so if one person falls behind, the entire group falls behind. The entire business falls behind, and then we create shadow work and shadow dynamics. And so if a person is feeling like something's wrong with them, bad, broken, not enough, the shame components, a person may hide. And if a person is hiding, they may feel unsafe, because whenever a person hides, there's a safety dynamic.
Yeah.
Whenever a person hides information in the form of dishonesty or lying, there's a safety dynamic. These are all nervous system dynamics that come online to create the hiding. Hiding is a behavior. Nervous system controls behavior on autopilot. And so what you want to do is you want to get your people to be able to be open in their nervous systems. If your nervous system is at ease, we have optimal work.
I think there's also probably an opportunity there where, as a leader, because I think about this with my own team, noticing when you're dysregulated, where your nervous system doesn't feel safe in the moment. As someone who also supports a lot of leaders, right? Even like it was your team on Condor Approach, and I'm supporting you as a strategist. I have other clients who are like that too. There's the leader of the organization, the CEO. I can notice sometimes when the leader in that situation is having a moment where they're very much not feeling safe and are in the middle of a literally back and forth. I just don't. And they're like, they start stuttering and there's this panic that starts to settle in. And I've had to, in those moments, go, okay, we're gonna just take a deep breath. And I'll even do that a couple more times. And then I'll be able to actually, what I've noticed for me at least, and I'm always looking for more practices with this, is my voice will drop a little bit lower. And I'll be like, you're safe here. You're safe here. I'll be like, right now, we do not have to talk about this thing that we're talking about. If you would like to talk about it, we can create a space for that. Are you open to that? And they're like, no, not right now. I'm like, okay, would you like to speak to me privately about that? And they're like, yeah, I would rather it be private. I'm like, okay. And then we can come back, and for the team, and I love, please let me know your perspective on this, but I'll go to the team and I'll be like, we will address this in a more different dynamic the next time we talk. I just want to be able for her to feel safe to say the thing and to express the thing and to work through the thing. And then we'll come back. But please know that this is not something that you guys have to worry about or dive into. And if you guys need anything, you can come to me for that. So I'm interested if there's other things like that you could give people on the team too.
Yeah, there is. The first thing though is I have an invitation. Are you open for it?
Yeah.
So never tell anybody you are safe.
Okay.
Okay. Never tell anybody that you are safe. What do you need to be safe? Because it's that person's safety. And I can say you're safe until I'm blue in the face. If you don't perceive safety, then it's like, what's wrong with me? Yeah. Because this person is an authority and they're telling me that I'm safe, but I don't feel safe. That's where we get into a disrupted space and it causes distress. And so it's not a dysregulatory space. We're not dysregulated, we are in distress.
Yes.
And when a person is in distress and their nervous system comes online to protect, that is quite the regulatory space that I want to be in. I want to be in a space where my nervous system is protecting me. And so if a person says to me, you're safe, and I'm like, I don't feel safe. That's my safety. Now I'm turning my safety into the hands of another person. And what I want on my team is sovereign individuals that are doing their part. And if I'm going to tell you that you're safe and you're not feeling safe, then and I put myself into this position where I'm like, well, they say I'm safe, then I guess I'm safe, and right? And so that's the number one thing is, what do you need to be safe right now? Are you safe? And if that should change, let me know, right? And because people will fawn, which is a whole other ball game, right? Fawning is a whole other part of the nervous system dynamic. It's a creative way to protect the self from abandonment. Right? And so when we look at these things, the first thing I would never do is tell a person you're safe. I would never tell a child that. And when there are plenty of, and we're talking about programming and conditioning nervous systems from when we're small. Oh, no. If a kid falls down and you're like, no, you're okay. The kid's crying, the kid's not okay. But the kid's saying, well, my parent is the authority here and they're saying I'm okay. Then what's wrong with me? Which creates a shame dynamic, which creates hiding, which creates more unsafety.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that would be one thing that I would lean into. But the first thing, even before that, is a training on what is safety. Right? Safety in the workplace is not just not falling down some steps, right?
That's true.
Or OSHA.
Yeah.
It's like, what is safety in the workplace? Freedom from hurt, harm, loss, deficit, injury, death, and pain. Right? And when you have freedom from those things, you can be easy. And there's no need to regulate a nervous system that is operating the way it's supposed to be, the way it's designed to operate. And if a person is like, I'm not safe, there's something not safe. If somebody frowns or somebody goes to your idea, right?
Yeah.
And you get angry, your idea has been threatened.
Yeah.
And so if your idea is unsafe, there's an unsafe complex that's happening within a person. And so understanding what safety is for the individual, right? Not for the collective, for the individual, and that individual person understanding what safety is, that is where the foundation point is for that.
I like the question around the switch to, well, what would make you feel safe right now? Because that's really helpful, especially when there's multiple people involved and being able to hold space in that way. I love that. For some reason, I can't think of what I was going to say, though. Maybe it'll come back to me as we keep going. When it comes to building businesses and teams and a new model, a new system, multiple systems, multiple models, whatever it is that we need, right? Beyond the initial training of what you're talking about, what are some other ways you can create environments that are safe, or create systems that are safe? What are things that you can physically say to your team? What are things that you can do when you're intaking with them? Like, I know that the 3 Ps that you have, I would love for you to go over those as well. Like, such small things, I think, make such a big difference. And so I would love any other examples.
Yeah, so creating a container, right? The masculine container provides an environment where a person can be safe. The environment is not creating safety. The person creates safety. Safety is a sovereign space. I can protect you, but that doesn't mean that you perceive safety. Okay? Like a dog's coming, rah, 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 rah. Oh my gosh, I'm so scared. I can put the dog in a leash, put the dog in a cage. The dog's still barking, and you may not feel safe.
Yeah, you can be in the same room with it.
Right, and so I'm providing an environment where you can be safe. And so it's like, okay, the dog's barking. What do you need to be safe? I need the dog to stop barking. Rufus, stop barking. Right, so now the dog has stopped barking. Can you breathe now that the dog has stopped barking? Let's breathe together. And get you into a nervous system space where you can actually tolerate yourself with the dog there, physically tolerate yourself, and then move into a place of accepting yourself with that dog there, checking in. Am I safe? Am I free from hurt, harm, loss, deficit, injury, death, pain? I've just created safety for myself in conjunction with this other person supporting me. I'm starting to understand the dynamic around the dog, right? And so this is where you're creating your own safety in a container where I have provided an environment where you can be safe, not where you are safe, okay? And you create the environment where you are safe. And I want you as an individual, a sovereign individual, to create that safety and not have to outsource that to anybody else.
Oh, I love that. I feel like that's been a big thing too lately, and it's something, let's touch on it, because there's a lot of conversation around, well, it's that person's job to make me feel safe in the situation. So how do you look at that?
Yeah, that's an interesting dynamic, to put your authority in someone else for your safety when it's your safety. And if that's how you want to live your life, that's fine. I'm in support of people living their lives the way they choose to live their lives. And if you're putting your safety in someone else's hands, there's always going to be a question mark, because it's not your safety. It's their safety. It's their keeping of your wholeness, of your safety and all that. So you're constantly looking outside of yourself for something. And I'm not mad at people looking outside of themselves for whatever it is, but you are going to rely on somebody else's will and somebody else's desire and somebody else's value of your safety in order for you to be in a position where you keep yourself safe, where you're kept safe.
If you can do that yourself, then you're able to self-source or self-resource your own safety. And then if that person, for anything, dies, leaves, reacts in a way that doesn't feel safe, whatever it is, then your safety is not threatened because you are self-sourcing your own safety.
That's right. Yeah. And part of your self-sourcing your safety. Self-sourcing your safety.
Say that 5 times fast.
Self-sourcing your safety, sister. See? Secluded. No, but when you self-source, you can use the environment as a part of that. And so it's like, in order to keep myself safe, I need to have a big burly man around me. Cool. Have you created an environment with this big burly man where he knows exactly what it is that you need and how you need to be protected? You've now created safety for yourself by sourcing the environment to do it for you. Now, this is where we start to understand the removal of the idea of separation, and that the environment is who we are and what we are. We utilize the environment to keep ourselves safe. And that's what people are doing when they outsource.
Yeah.
But when you rely on a source outside of you and the source is sketchy, or the source isn't aware of everything that you need as far as your components of safety, then you have question marks.
Yeah.
And so this is where it's like, okay, what do you need to feel safe in this moment? What do we all need to feel safe as a collective of people in this business? If we haven't had this discussion, let's have this discussion. And this is where we can have a quarterly safety meeting, right? Let's talk about safety. Have you been feeling safe? Well, you know, when I make a proposal and somebody snickers, I don't feel safe. Okay, well, cool. Well, what about the person who's snickering? If they feel like snickering and that's their free expression, are they safe? What do we need to get it out on the table? What does snickering mean to this person, right? What's happening? Are they amused? Are they feeling insecure? What are they, or do they not like it? What does that mean? And so when we have these conversations, we could build this quarterly safety meeting into the structure. Let's talk about it. Are you safe at home? Are you safe here? Are you safe? What does that mean to you?
Well, even an intake, like when you're hiring someone or when you're the beginning of a meeting, or I would say like even what I just thought of was if I was to hire someone and have them in onboarding and be like, what makes you feel safe? Like, what does safety mean to you? What does that look like for you? What does it look like for you in this dynamic versus this dynamic, and being able to have that conversation? And then how do you navigate people who have, like you just said, one person is like, well, I feel safe doing this, and that's threatening to someone else on a team, for example. How do you approach that as a leader going forward?
Yeah, we have a conversation about it, and we get into terms where it's like, if you can't work with this person who's snickering, if you can't work without snickering, then do we build the business around this? Do we let people go? How do we function in this space together without stopping people from being in their full expression? You know what I mean? And that's one of the things with hypermasculinization of things, is we stop people from feeling, we stop people from expressing, we stop people from being for the convenience of the business. And when we put people behind things, the things become more important than the people. And that's what's a lot of our businesses are this way. When you look at the corporate structures that are happening, where people are working in office spaces, where they're in cubicles, the people don't matter.
No, they're just
structure-
another number.
They're just another number. The structure matters. Get this done, be productive, and shut up. And that's it. But we're not considering this. And so when we move into this echelon where we have these female intuitive business owners who can build this type of situation into spaces, and then we don't knock out all the old businesses, we transition into a new style where we integrate all the styles together.
Yeah.
That's where we have a difference. But this is where we've been so heavily swung into the masculine side of the pendulum shift. If we swing and we go into a full feminine space, is going to be a challenge in that side too.
I feel like we already did that in a way, like not as in the world in a whole. I know that this is just one bubble online where it's like, I feel like a lot of us swung into being free and flowing and fun and all these, and I feel like we're kind of, at least it feels like that for me from what I'm witnessing. It's almost like we swung there, maybe not to the degree of like the rest of the world, but a lot of people are experiencing that. And now it's somewhat over the next couple of years, I think, going to swing back a little bit into the, how do we integrate these two to be able to work together and be able to have, more, less dysregulation in terms of nervous systems.
Yeah, I mean, well, I would say less distress.
Yeah,
right?
less distress.
Less distress than in the past is being able to have conversations and bring awareness to the situation. If people are not aware that this is going on in their businesses, then there's shadow work.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's the illumination of all the uncomfortable places and having the uncomfortable conversations. Understanding confrontation dynamics are extremely important. There's a difference between confrontation and conflict. Okay, when I confront you with something, I'm bringing it to your attention. I'm bringing it in front of you. When I'm in conflict, I'm bumping heads, right? Or I'm attacking, or I'm being attacked, or protecting, or whatever. That's a conflict space. So understanding the difference between confrontation and conflict is very important in this space and dynamic.
It's so funny because as you're talking about all these things, I know we've discussed them so many times before, and I've been at the Condor Approach, and I worked in the back end of your business, but it's so interesting to me when I start thinking about it, and I'm like, oh, I remember this conversation I had with this person. Was that conflict or confrontation, right? And I just start thinking about it differently. Before I forget, I want the 3 Ps. Let's talk about those really quick, because I feel like that's a beautiful practice as well.
Sure. So one of the most important things we teach at the Condor Approach is the 3 Ps. And whenever there is what we call an SOS, right? whenever you feel stuck or whenever something happens, we have the 3 Ps: the pause, the pull back, and the physical scan. And so if we're in a meeting and someone starts to look like they're drifting off, we can all pause. Hey, listen, I'm going to call for a pause. So we pause. I'm going to invite everybody to pull back and see where you are and see what's going on in the room. And then do a physical scan and see what's coming up. Is anything coming up for you? Do you feel any kind of change in your heart rate, in your body temperature? Are you feeling are you frowning? What's your face doing? Are you biting inside of your cheeks? Is anything happening within you? And do a physical scan, and then we proceed from there, right? And so most people are unaware of what's going on. So when it's like, I don't know. Okay, cool. If you don't know, let's take a pause. Let's breathe, right? Because oxygen.
I love I don't know. I don't know is my favorite one because I'm like, it's your brain trying to protect you in a beautiful way.
I don't know is a trauma response.
It is a trauma response.
99% of the time.
Yeah.
Sometimes people just don't know. I don't know. Right?
Yeah.
And most of the time it's a response to being able to answer, and maybe the answer not being accepted, maybe the answer causing trouble, and so they're protecting the environment and themselves from themselves from the environment. And so that space is where we get trapped.
Yeah.
Right? And so being able to pause and pull back, do a physical scan and see where you are in that position, so powerful. I have some Condor coaches that's all they teach. They just teach the 3 Ps. They teach people how to navigate in that space. They teach kids how to navigate. All right, let's take a pause. And then there's going to be people that are angry at the pause. They don't want to take the pause because they're used to bypassing everything with activity. And so if you can't pause, right? Yeah, something just snapped into place there. And so people will bypass the pause. That was me. I didn't want to stop. Somebody's like, let's all take a deep breath. I'd be like, I don't want to take a deep breath. Why do I need to take a deep breath? Because I wasn't safe.
Yeah.
I wasn't safe to slow down, and I didn't want to be seen.
Yeah.
And so if a person doesn't want to be seen, the pause may be scary for them.
Yeah.
And so being able to do this, teach people this on the front end, outside of conflict, outside of confrontation, teach people, hey, listen, if things do come up, any of us can call for a pause. Hey, can we take a pause? Can we take a moment? Right? Can we all take a breath together? Or I'm going to take a breath. If you want to join me, cool, you can join me. And now as a business person, if you're a leader, understanding something called a parasympathetic override is very important.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Yeah, parasympathetic override. Now, when I get on stages, I usually get on stage and I wait and I look around and I wait for everybody to start looking at me, and then I take a couple of breaths and I accentuate my chest. The bodies in the room will want to get in on it because we are pack animals, right? And so I'm actually getting everybody in the room to breathe. Most of the people will breathe, right? And then when I do it again, the people who were resistant will start to lean into it. By the time I get to the third breath, most of the room, there'll still be people who will be resistant to it, but most of the room will be in synchronization. That is a parasympathetic override. And so what I'm doing is I'm getting everybody to get into an empathetic space. I'm getting everybody to get into a clearer brain space because they now have more oxygen and have gotten rid of carbon dioxide. And I'm getting them to slow down into a position where they can actually receive the information. And so when you're in a meeting with people and you say, hey, listen, I'm going to take a few breaths. If you want to join me, cool. If you don't, that's fine too. Their body will have to slow down. And so the breathing pattern, and also slowing
How you speak.
down how you speak. People will lean in because they're waiting for the next word. And so they'll have to focus. And so they'll have to breathe around that in order to be able to hone in on what you're saying.
I swear every time you say something, I'm like, oh my God, that's why there's so much, someone just said this to me. They were like, oh my God, there's so much, like they're over too many senses, so many things. What's the word for it? It's overstimulated. They were like, I feel overstimulated. And I was like, yeah, are you listening to everything at 1.5x speed? Are you always on your phone? So it just makes me think about the speed of the voice. And it's like, well, maybe that's what's overstimulating. But if you slow down, can you bring yourself back into that state that you were talking about, being like, okay, actually we can move from this and your nervous system will feel a lot better from it. So
It'll feel a lot different.
yeah.
Yeah, better or worse is
Versus
relative, right?
relative, yeah.
So it's some people, when they slow down, they get panicky because they're so used to bypassing everything. And so the slow down can be frightening, terrifying for people. To be in a place where they're clear can be terrifying. And so they can get overstimulated, because overstimulation, they don't have to lean into certain things. There's all sorts of dynamics that can happen with people.
And is that also why, would you say that's also why, like for those people who have gotten very used to the overstimulation, did I say that right?
Overstimulation.
Overstimulation. I think I put a Z in there or something, whatever. The overstimulation.
I got it.
Yeah. Often what I see is when they're so used to that state, the idea of being peace or in contentment or a slow pace, it almost like puts them in a state of panic because they're like, that's not normal in my nervous system because they've normalized something else. Is that similar to what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, normalization is it's a condition. It's a program. It's not necessarily a regulation. It's a program.
Yeah.
And so if a person is used to a particular program of speed and you slow them down, it's not their normalized space anymore. So it's not native to the organism in the moment.
Yeah.
Right. Native can be a relative space too. Right.
Yeah.
So it's not native to the organism based on it, or should I say, it's not native to the conditioning.
Yeah. And if you are going to decondition and normalize a slower state, for example, it's going to take time and to not shame yourself and to a lot of the other things that just giving people a little bit of like, hey, just because you're not used to, and it hasn't been normalized that it's a slow or peace or contentment or whatever it is, it takes a little bit of time to shift out of that. Well, that's what you desire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I find it's more, the more years you have on a person, the more challenging it is because they get baked in. I mean, you didn't get this way. If you're 40 years old, you didn't get this way overnight.
Yeah.
So having a new program is not going to be an overnight process.
No.
There are things that can accelerate, like breathwork can accelerate, trauma can accelerate, right? Psychedelics can accelerate things. Like there are different ways that you can hack into and accelerate the process, but you still have to build your nervous system around dynamics.
And have the habits and things that afterwards, integration, to be able to actually sustain or be able to utilize those practices to move forward. Yeah. I feel like that's what happened with me because I went to your Costa Rica retreat and I was already on definitely a journey of like, of all of this. And my experience where I did 2 different psychedelic experiences in 1 month, one with all women and then one with the Costa Rica retreat, which was a co-ed one and entirely different medicine. It accelerated that for me, where when I came out, I was in an entirely different state and stress was pretty much non-existent from my body for over a year. But that doesn't mean it doesn't come back up and it doesn't, you know what I mean? Like, and I love being able to normalize that it doesn't have to be stress all the time. In fact, if it's stress all the time, it's probably something to look at in how you're navigating life and the systems that you have set up and the way that you're approaching things. And I love what you said earlier, because I just want to recognize you for this, is I feel like the language of like the pause, pull back, physical scan, like any of this language that we're using, I love it because oftentimes, and languages sometimes fall short, but what I love about it is that when you're in the middle of a dynamic that you're like, ooh, didn't like that, didn't make me feel safe, it's not often safe for you to say, that didn't make me feel safe to the person, and to have language or tools that you can use in the moment with your boss or your partner or a client that you're working with, where you can use that language to be like, I'm feeling a little unsafe right now, or whatever the language is. I'm going to pause, pull back, and can we do a physical scan? Whatever that language is, I think it's so helpful to have those. So I just want to thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, well, thank you for the acknowledgement. You know, repetition, there are two ways we make habits. Repetition and impact. And then the third way can be repetition and impact together. And if I say to a person, hey, listen, this is an environment where you can be safe, a person may not believe that. And so I have to say it again. And I have to show up in that way so that that person's nervous system can actually adjust to it. Because if their family life has been a place where they put themselves with people they can't trust.
Yeah.
If their relationships, their romantic relationships, their friendship relationships, are where they put people they can't trust. And then they come to a business and it's like, oh, this person says this, but they don't trust themselves to put themselves around people who are trustworthy. And so being a person of integrity and me showing up in a position where I am being trustworthy on repeat
Yeah.
gives them an environment where they can shift their nervous system to start trusting themselves.
Yeah, it's a new model.
It's totally a new model.
That's one thing I loved about when I was working on with your guys' back end and everything. I was like, oh, wow, this is a new model and a new way of approaching team dynamics, which was beautiful.
Yeah. And it's a scary, it's an uncharted territory, and so most people are like, I don't know, I don't trust this. You can only trust me as much as you trust yourself.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things that I've been working with female bodies in particular, with feminine organisms and people, is they have trust issues because they've been in positions where they have not been taught how to trust themselves enough to put themselves in systems where they trust.
Yeah.
And so if they put themselves around a person that says, oh, you're safe, and they don't feel safe, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's like, listen, what do you need to be safe? When Cole's like, I don't feel, when she feels wonky, I'm like, what do you need to feel safe right now? Are you safe?
Yeah.
What does that look like? I can't say, hey, Cole, you're safe. This is ridiculous. And then there's a shaming around your dynamics, And so with businesses, it's not any different.
Yeah.
It's very important for us to have that as a foundational bedrock of safety, because the nervous system operates around that.
And it's more of like, what do you need to feel safe right now? Not, and correct me if I'm wrong. So if you're like to someone, what do you need to feel safe right now? And they're like, money. I need the money to come in. That's a forward safety. Yes, of course you need that. But it's like, what do you need right now in this moment to feel safe? And that as well.
Right. Yeah. And in that space, and it's not a correction of right or wrong. It's a perspective.
Yeah.
So I just want you to know that.
Yeah.
If a person, I need money, it's not necessarily a future-paced situation. That's what the person needs. And so in order to feel safe, okay, well, cool. What do you need right now to know that money is going to be coming? Oh, well, I would need to know that this is in place. Okay, well, do we have a strategy? No, we don't have a strategy. Let's build a strategy for it.
Yeah.
And then most of the time, people will start to feel safer when they have a strategy in place. But again, we say this is the Condor Approach, and I say this all the time. There are no limited human beings. There are only limited states of being and limiting strategies to create those limited states.
Yeah.
And so if a person is feeling limited, I don't have money. Okay, well, what's your money strategy? Well, I don't have one. Okay, well, what if we started building a strategy right now? How would that feel? Oh, it would feel awesome. So let's start building a strategy. What do you need to be aware of your state? What do you need as far as accountability is concerned, right? You have what your awareness is. What is your current strategy? Do you want to make a plan for a new strategy? And how are you going to be held accountable for that, so that this can be into place? And most of the time when people have those bumpers, that's the masculine container to bounce around inside of, and then we put that into play. And that's how you have the masculine and feminine dynamic play together.
I love that. I feel like we kind of went over everything I wanted to. Like, there's so much more I could dive into here, but I'm like, we're going to talk forever. And then we'll be back. If there was one thing, or I would say if there were up to 3 things, because you never know, I never know with you. If there was up to 3 things that you could tell feminine leaders in creating these businesses of what they may need to look at or may need to know, or just a piece of advice, what would be those things?
Yeah. The first thing is to have awareness of yourself, where you are and how you operate. Get in tuned and dialed in with how your nervous system and your hormone complex works. Understand what your cycles are like.
Yeah.
Okay? And I'm not just talking about your menstrual cycle, I'm talking about your entire life cycles.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. The second thing I would say is understand what the masculine energetic dynamic is like that you're probably operating in a lot, understanding what that's like in contrast to the feminine dynamic, and then see how you can build that into your business structure, right? That's a second thing. it's really important to understand how those two different dynamics work and how the male and female bodies work in those contexts. The third thing I would say is build safety into everything that you do, and understanding that safety is important for wholeness of your business, of yourself, and the people that you work with and for. And when you have that wholeness, devoid of any kind of violent circumstances, you can grow a business into an amazing place.
I love that. I actually thought of one more thing I want to ask you. Can you very briefly talk about the difference between safety and security?
Sure. Safety is, for me, and I've done this at the Condor Approach and with my clients and all this stuff, and I've asked people what safety is for them, and it's always this nebulous stuff. And when I had this one thing come in, I have my downloads in the middle of the night. Safety is the space where we are whole, where we perceive wholeness, wholeness of the self, wholeness of the environment, wholeness of whatever. And when wholeness gets disrupted, we become unsafe. And so safety is the absence of hurt, harm, loss, deficit, injury, death, and pain. Right now. Security is a future idea of safety.
That's what it was. Yeah.
Okay. So security is the idea of safety in the future.
Yeah.
And most of the time, people are focused on security, not safety. And they're not observing that right now they're outside of hurt, harm, loss, deficit, injury, death, pain, or that there is one or two things that may be outside of that space that they're not focusing on because they're focusing on my pension, getting the car payment done, rent paid next week.
Yeah.
But right now they're not focused on their safety.
I love that. I think that was the thing that I was trying to think about earlier, because I was like, there's one thing that was the difference between those two really impacted me, because I'm like, safety is in the now versus security for the future.
For the future, yeah.
And even the example that I gave of like, they're like, I need money. And I'm like, because they're panicking about the future. I'm like, that's security versus safety in the moment right now. So I love that. I'm glad that we can talk about that. And thank you so much for the three. I knew there was gonna be more than one. I was like, you're like, girl, I got so many more.
Girl, I listen. Open up Pandora's box over here. I got a lot of information.
Yes. And what's amazing is that anyone that's listening, we actually have a Q&A forum that's in any of the descriptions. So if you have questions, if you want Tah to come back on, which of course we all do, feel free to drop questions in there. And then also all of the links and ways to connect. And if you want to talk about anything in terms of if you have a freebie or if you have a class or something that you would love to recommend, we can get the link and put that below.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. My recommendation for any business owner is I have a course called The Boundary Blueprint.
Yeah.
And it's like $50. It's some absurdly cheap amount of money. It's $50. Get it and let your
team,
your employees watch this on setting boundaries, because boundaries are a great place to create safety for the self. And when most of the time when people are walking into spaces, there isn't a clear boundary set up. A boundary always has a consequence. A request does not. Get away from me is a request. It's not a boundary.
Yeah.
Get away from me or I'm gonna hit you or push you is a boundary.
Yeah.
Right? There's a difference.
Yeah.
And so I would highly recommend that. Yeah, we could put a link to that. And yeah, I mean, I have so many resources.
There's so many resources.
There's so many resources. So we can pop all of them in there.
Okay, that sounds good to me. If you guys have any questions, like I said, drop it in the Q&A. I absolutely love Tah. You should check out the Condor Approach as well. They do it.
Come to Condor.
Live. It's there's so many, it's one of the best communities. They have such amazing people. I've met some really great friends there, and just totally next level in terms of emotional navigation. So yeah, let us know if you have any questions. And I'm so excited to talk to you about all this.
Thank you for having me. It's been wonderful. Thanks y'all for watching, and feel free to hit me up. Let me know. Come to Condor, y'all. It will change your whole trajectory. Come to Condor. And if anybody's looking for one-on-one work, hit me up. I only take 4 people at any given time. So
That's right.
it fills up quick.
Yeah. All right. Thank you guys.
Peace.
Bye. Thank you so much for listening to this Wildly Satisfied production. I hope you enjoyed the show, and we would love it if you would share